Natsiam Sasyat, got a great gift here coming that you're going to be sharing with the world. Jewel, it's a beautiful day. You got a great project on your hands, huh?
Well, it's not just me. You know, I'm the head carver of the House of Tears Carvers. We're incorporated under the laws of the Lummi Nation, which is authorized not only by the Lummi Constitution, but by federal law on the Tribal Governmental Tax Status Act. But being as it may, over the past decades, we have done numerous journeys across the United States and provided totem poles for various causes and raised them in different communities. This totem pole here is 24 feet 8 inches tall. It's 43 inches wide and 2 feet thick. Except for where the eagle's head. The eagle adds another 15 inches out from the back. We have a moon on top, and that's 52.5 inches across. But being as it may, there's a lot of history here in coordination that is the cause of a lot of effort by a lot of people across the United States. Nonprofit, community activists, there's leadership that we will get to know on the journey that will come forward because they help raise funds so that we can do a journey across the United States to honor, recognize, and call for prayers for sacred sites of Native Americans. We're going to stop at several sacred sites as we journey across the country. Round trip, we're going to do about 7,400 miles. We're going to be leaving in May and returning in June. There's going to be about a dozen of us on journey, and we will be working with local tribes to perform various blessing ceremonies and working together to help each other watch out for these sacred sites so that corporations or governments don't go in and needlessly destroy them. I'm honored to recognize that this pole will be going back to the Smithsonian, and we will be, and we have people working with the Secretary of Interior and the White House to determine exactly where the pole will go. My understanding, it will go into the Smithsonian. Whether that's on display or storage, I shall wait and see. As the carver or main carver, I just guide all my assistants. And I'm proud to say we have assistants that are all the way from this little 4-year-old boy on up to my elder brother, Douglas, who's now 70 and has put a lot of hours into the pole along with me. We have my sons, my blood son and my 2 adopted sons that are my nephews by law. And of course, my good friend Heather Hunter Masonis and her children are helping as well. We're all going to be on journey because we all put something into the pole, and we believe that our prayers mean something. I'm always happy to do these poles because it opens up the path to the Spirit. And you got to believe. All the symbols that have been added to this pole came one at a time. It was based on the space. Well, you carve one and then you look at the next space and see how it blends into the other until you finally get to the bottom and there's the totem pole. So once you let me walk you through some of the symbols that we have here. Well, we added almost a foot on each side of the original log, and then we cut it down until we had a 52.5 inch moon, which is approximately the appropriate size for the totem. And here we have the Indian in the moon on it with the 2 feathers over his forehead. And normally we have wood logs in the fire. This is a crater on the moon actually, but here I'm putting the that's a pearl. That circle represents the pearl. And that brings the story of the Isleta Pablo's story about the man that married the moon. He was a great man of great knowledge and weaving of their stories. The next figure we have is the diving eagle. His tail feathers overlap the moon, and his wings are back. And on the shoulder, we have here the salmon head design, they call it. Okay, and you can see we added the eagle head to the log. And so that's sunk into the wood, and it's bolted and glued, and then sealed. Okay, here we have a Chinook salmon. There's a Chinook salmon on each side, representing, one represents the food of the southern resident killer whale pod, and then the other Chinook represent all the Chinook that go up the various rivers, especially the Columbia River and the Snake River, where the tribes are really trying to get the dams removed so that the salmon can return. Is the head of a wolf. As we go down, you got his feet on the side, and you can see his tail. Okay, so that's about an 8 foot long wolf carved into it. Here we have the symbol of the Canadian copper, and it's really especially tied to the potlatching, which really reflects the native Northwest Natives giving of property to everybody else. That's how you become a person of status. We didn't put a figure like a eagle or a raven or anything on it. We want it to be a general one, and it reflects our Canadian cousins. We're a border tribe, and we have a lot of relatives up in Canada. This one here is a grandmother, a medicine woman, a shamaness. It's a traditional mother, and she's praying, and she's using a rattle. She represents the generation that came to pass on the traditions to the children that come up behind her. Here we have a daughter also using a rattle and singing along with her mother, her grandmother. And so she's following the tradition, the traditional knowledge that was passed on to her. And so here you can see in front of her are 7 tiers. That's the 7 generations of trauma that come in between the children and the elders. It's a part of that historical trauma. Okay, so here we have the other Chinook salmon I was talking about. It's still being sanded and worked on. But it's you can see it's fairly large. Here, it's also about 8 feet long. I've never actually measured it yet. Is a bear, also in crouching position. These are his feet and his head here. And of course, you know, like bear's ears and the native wolf and the bear are extremely important, just like the eagle to many natives. Here you can see that we're installing 7 peyote symbols. This grandmother or this traditional mother also represents peyote woman that brought peyote to the Mexican, we call it Mexicans now, but the Native Americans of what's called Mexico today, 10,000 years ago. Their population went all the way up into Colorado at the time that they were still singing these peyote songs 10,000 years ago. And so many of us are members of the Native American Church, and you can see where she's got her hand up, she's praying. She's praying for somebody specific. Okay, here's who she's praying for. This is a Mexican child or indigenous child in a cage. You know, we just went through an experience where many children were locked up and they weren't given justice. This little guy is reaching out. He's got a fist because he's mad, but he's also reaching out for somebody to help him. These little 3 and 4-year-old natives had to represent themselves in court. And so this is a great injustice. And those are our indigenous people south of the Mexican border. our people down there amongst the Pueblos all the way to San Diego, all across into Texas, have relatives over that border still. You know, Texas and all the way up into Colorado was once their traditional territory. And yet when they came recently to the United States, they got locked up, dehumanized. And so those are our people, those little children. And so she's praying for those children. You can see gouge marks all around her and the daughter, around the peyote, and even going into the cage. That represents the falling rains. It'll be rain colored when we paint it up. Then finally, this part here represents the rivers.
The rivers we'll be following when we take this over to DC?
Yeah, we're going to be going up the Columbia River and the Snake River and crossing over all the rivers and down into the lands of the Dakotas, where the waters are extremely important. The water is the blood of the earth, you know, and that's another thing, is that grandma represents the flowing, the traditional mother here represents the flowing waters, or, you know, just like the moon way up on top influences our women, influences the earth and the flowing of the waters and the winds. This will be the last spot, and I'm only going to put one little a design in it, and it's going to be a young eagle feather will be right here. And the reason is, 2 days ago, I dreamt at daybreak I was traveling with a relative, and the wind brought a dancing eagle feather right to me. And so my cousin says, open the window and grab it. And so that's what I was doing at daybreak in the dream, reaching out to grab that dancing eagle feather that came with the wind. So I took that as a sign to put that eagle feather right here in this open spot. Well, we want to say that carving this totem pole has been a great experience. I've been fortunate to have a couple visionary dreams tied to it already, you know, and that's always important because it indicates that the spirit is watching over us. This totem pole is not sponsored by the Lummi Nation. It cost the Lummi Nation absolutely nothing. All the funds were raised outside, and all the funds to cover the journey to Washington, D.C. have come from outside the Lummi Nation. We will ask the Lummi Nation to give us their blessings, but also we're going to ask 2 or 3 other tribes in the Pacific Northwest. We hope to load it up on the truck when it's done and go see some of our local relatives in the other reservations and ask them to pray for a safe journey. It's going to take all of us to work together to protect sacred sites and places. Many of us believe that the United States owes it to us to listen. They entered into sacred relationships with us. Some people call it a treaty, but they use their voices to promise. And to us, when you use your voice, it takes the sacred wind, and the Great Spirit gives you the energy to talk. And your commitment is one of spiritual significance to Native Americans. And so we hope by bringing this totem pole to Washington, D.C., will also awaken the sacred commitment the United States has to the Native American nations.
Yes, yeah.